seeker who's ready to move forward in your life. If you're wanting to shift from struggling to feeling that life is effortless, send me an email to book a free session with me, KeithAnthonyBlanchard@gmail.com, and title that email in the subject, Keith, I'd love that free session. I'll show you how you can move into your RPM, to move into the grid, man, the really cool grid where things begin to happen effortlessly. Recognize who you are, plug into your real power, and manifest the effortless you desire in your life. Effortlessness in abundance, relationship to expand you in your spiritual journey. You want more psychic abilities, more intuition. I like the word intuition a little better. It's not so. That word psychic has been used and abused. Let me rev you up. Again, send me an email at KeithAnthonyBlanchard@gmail.com and ask for your free session. I would love to help you do that. If you've been listening to Center of Light Radio for a while, you know that I spend almost all of my time creating and putting out an abundance of information and how to expand one's life into greater degrees of bliss. Now, Center of Light beings, I want to provide you with an outlet to plug into my RPM energy grid. Go to Center of Light Radio. Click on that Ferrari you will see at the bottom of the page. It'll take you to the RPM program. It'll tell you what you get and what you will be able to create. You'll have these one-on-one sessions, as I mentioned, with me. But also look to the right of that. You'll see a sign-up form. Fill it out. You'll have access to my ongoing newsletter program, which will begin shortly. But I will begin to send you, in bundles, of course, all of my creations up to this point. Check this out, digitally, but for free. Fill it out. And that process will begin immediately, and everything begins to roll. Welcome to Center of Light Radio. Again, my name is Keith Anthony Blanchard. I did get a message from my alien-human hybrid friend who is head of security in this quadrant of our galaxy. Hard to believe, I know, but the truth does not need anyone's permission to exist. He denied my request to interview him. He said, Keith, I would just love to, but my level of security, I just cannot do that. But hopefully we'll get Dr. Rex Hare on the show, who was the first person I've interviewed on Center of Light Radio on Inception Radio Network 3 years ago. One of the participants in this experience with Nucleus 8 alien human hybrid. He was around it for 4 years. He's a 40-year clinical psychologist. Trust me, he knows what human behavior looks like. And this was nothing of the sort. Now it's time to get down to Center of Light Radio business. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. The show title for tonight is No One, Not a Single Soul. No one is born racist. Jane Elliott, international known teacher, lecturer, diversity trainer, and recipient of the National Mental Health Association Award for Excellence in Education, exposes prejudice, and bigotry for what it is, an irrational class system based upon purely arbitrary factors. And if you think this does not apply to you, you are in for a rude awakening. Bold statement. In response to the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. over 30 years ago, Jane Elliott devised a controversial and startling blue eyes, brown eyes exercise. This, now famous, exercise labels participants as inferior or superior based solely upon the color of their eyes and exposes them to the experience of being a minority. Everyone who is exposed to Jane Elliott's work, be it through a lecture, workshop, or video, is dramatically affected by it. You can find more about my guests at www.janeelliott.com. Welcome to Center of Light Radio, Jane Elliott.
Well, thank you for welcoming me. I don't know why you're having me on, but I'm perfectly happy to do this.
Well, I'll tell you why, because I watched you on social media here and there for a couple of years, and one day something said, Keith, this is a must. I love your message. It is my message. I think it's the message of lots of people. So let me ask you this question, Jane, if I may. You, I, and people look alike. We are definitely not racist, but some of us just are not.
Wait. Don't say I'm not a racist. If you were born, schooled, and raised in the United States of America, and you're not a racist, you didn't go to school, number one. And if you did go to school and you aren't a racist, you're a miracle. Because we don't educate people in the United States of America. We indoctrinate people. It takes us from the ages of 5, it used to be 5, now it's 3, until you're 18 to get you thoroughly indoctrinated to the myth of white superiority and the grandness of the United States of America. So if you come through that and you aren't a racist, somebody has interfered with your education, and you'll have to go back and take that course over again.
I love
people,
it.
ordinarily people think that being a racist means you lynch people. No. It means that you perform psychological genocide on students in the schools on a daily basis. And you get well paid for doing that. And if you send out a person who is absolutely convinced of the rightness of whiteness, then you can go on to college and learn some more, be reinforced in what you learned in kindergarten. And they've done studies that prove that the longer you stay in school, the more bigoted you become, because the more reinforcement you get for those lies that were told you in kindergarten. Now that sounds really harsh and cruel and rude and mean, and nobody listening to this is going to think it applies to them. But close your eyes. I don't know whether your eyes are closed, but close your eyes and picture a racist. Now open your eyes. What did you picture?
Someone who is racist, and it didn't seem like any image of myself. I'm not saying I don't have some of that deeply rooted and has any residual effects, but I know that Keith Anthony Blanchard, myself, it doesn't exist in me in a conscious way. That is a fact.
Well, if it doesn't, are you a person of the white color group or another color group?
I'm a white boy. Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, but number one, you said a white boy.
Yes.
And boy is the word we use to infantilize males of color on a daily basis. And number one, you're a member of the white color group. It's okay to say that instead of saying the white race, because that's what you are. There's only one race on the face of the earth. There are lots of color groups. There are 2,500 different skin colors on the face of the earth. Can you think of 2,500 different names for racists or for races?
Maybe a few, not that many.
You think it's no? Well, the people who thought this up couldn't think of more than 3 either, and that's what they thought of, and that's where we are. And it was a lie 500 years ago, after the Spanish Inquisition, when they were looking around to find another way to decide who to enslave or who to abuse. They couldn't use religion anymore because you can't always tell what a person's religion is by looking at them. So they had to find a physical characteristic that was obvious, and they set on skin color. That's only been 500 years ago. There have always been many different people of different colors, but basing basing our ability to kill or to enslave people has been based for 500 years on skin color. It makes no sense at all. Skin color is simply your skin's reaction to the sunlight. It's a chemical, melanin in your skin, either the presence or the absence of it does not change your intelligence. People need to know that, but they don't know it because they've had 500 years to learn a lie.
So, Jane, when did this become an active part of your life? I mean, I know you've been an educator for many, many years, and I'm sure this was, to use the word, brewing for you, but was there an event that took place personally close to you, if I may, without being too personal, that prompted you to become a very active participant in this movement? Beautiful.
Yeah, I was in college, and I had high school, and the only person that we ever saw while I was in high school was one black football player who was on an opposing team. And my brother played football, and he said, that guy's one of the greatest sports I've ever seen. He's terrific, and he's not only a sportsman, he's a good person to be, to be in a contest with. And at that point, I thought, then maybe we've been lied to for a long time about black people not being as smart as the rest of us. And then I went to college, and I learned that I had been lied to absolutely, that my high school, my elementary, junior, and senior high school education was a flat-out lie where skin color is concerned. Made me furious. And then I married my lovely husband, who looked like Marlon Brando. Did he ever? And we moved to Waterloo, Iowa. Yeah, oh God, I love it too. And we moved to Waterloo, Iowa, which was called Little Chicago because the number of blacks that were there. And awful things were said in the area in which we lived about blacks, but my husband worked in a grocery store that was in the North End, which was the black section. And he found out that one person who worked for the federal government came in every week and stole from him. The blacks didn't. He found out that black people, we had been lied grossly to about black people. And we both found out that the people we were associating with in the white section, and it was a very distinct. These were white people living. Here's where black people live at that time. The people we were living with would drive all the way across town on Sunday and get down on their knees and pray that their kids wouldn't have to be bused to school in order to integrate the schools. And we knew that the whole thing was absolutely upside down and backward. My husband had one black employee. The company that he worked for would allow him to have one black employee. Well, Jim Jackson went to college, so Darrell was without a black employee. And the head of the NAACP in Waterloo, Iowa, came to my husband and said, "Darrell, we're going to picket your store." He said, "Why would you do that?" She said, "Because you don't have a black employee." He said, "Find me a black employee." She said, "No, I don't want you to have a black employee. I want to picket your store." So they picketed my husband's store. It was the first store picketed in Waterloo during the Civil Rights Movement. So we decided it was time to get out of Waterloo because there were going to be riots starting and we were going to have to take sides. We moved out to get away from having to take sides in that situation.
Jane, I live in Memphis, Tennessee. I live in the midst. I live in the midst of it all. Meaning, honestly, Jane, I don't turn a blind eye to the situation. I really, really don't. I do it more from a conscious perspective. I don't acknowledge the presence of it, which helps me to stay in my best place. And as I stay in my best place,
you don't ignore. You don't pay attention to the presence of it. You don't admit the presence of it.
Oh, absolutely, I do. But I don't water the weed.
That's what you said. What did you just say? I don't want the presence of it.
I'm very much aware that it exists, especially where I live. But I don't buy into the illusion that most people here in the proximity of where I live do, which exacerbates and makes it grow. In fact, when I go into a particular area, regardless of the color of being or people that are there, I don't allow that to consume me. I don't allow it to knock me off my center. I don't allow such things in whatever part of town that is said by other people to be a bad place. I don't allow it to affect me because I go in there, and when I get out of my car, wherever it is I'm at, with people that are not like me and I am not like them, I immediately begin to make friends. It's like, "Hello, how are you doing, sir?" I open the door. So I don't buy into this game that most people do that keeps this horrible energy alive.
Well, when you see a person of a different color group and you're in the part of town which they have been confined to, you never feel that maybe you're an interloper there?
Not whatsoever. In fact, I live, quote, to make the point, in that part of town. I live in Midtown, Memphis, Tennessee. In fact, you go less than 1 mile down to the grocery store to get gas in your vehicle. That part of town that we're describing in a very polite way, I'm right there, and I fill my vehicle up all the time. In fact, I've been doing it so long, I could have initially got out of my vehicle and had that feeling. It doesn't exist for me, the point I was trying to make. And so when I step out of my car, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, I just go through the gamut not as if, the fact that they're actually just like everybody else and everybody is just like them. That racism does not exist for me. It might exist for those other people who are living in ignorance, but it does not exist for me.
Do you think it doesn't exist for the black people who are in that area?
That very well could be said, but it doesn't exist for me, and the mirror reflection that I am able to have happen in my life is an ally, camaraderie, friendship. People that have been going there so long now, they get out the car. "Hey, Keith, what's going on, man? How's things are going today?" And da 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 da. It doesn't exist. I don't buy into it and I don't turn a blind eye to it. I know there is an issue and a problem that exists. It doesn't exist for me.
But please don't say it doesn't exist for you. Because whether or not you go along with that, to say it doesn't exist for you is just to make the statement that I don't have to worry about it. You see, as far as I'm concerned, you're one of my cousins, and so are all those people of all those other color groups, my cousins. If it exists for them, it exists for me, and I want it stopped.
Oh, totally agree. I understand your point in that aspect because that's why I had you on this show, for the very reason that you can educate myself to different ideas. For the reason you can educate myself to different ideas as well as other people. Absolutely. I care about the situation. But for me, on a personal level, how it affects my day-to-day life as I move about in the world, I do not live in fear of said racism, especially for the part of the country that I live in. I do not.
But listen to what you're saying. You don't live in fear. You don't have to think about it. It doesn't exist for you. That's exactly what I want every person in Memphis to be able to say. It doesn't exist for me. I don't have to live in fear. I send my 10-year-old boy out to the grocery store. If he comes home with a toy that looks like a gun, I don't have to worry about him being shot by the cops. I want everybody to be able to make the statement that you just did. It doesn't exist for me. I have no fear. I can go where I choose to, be what I choose to be, do what I want to do without being afraid that I will get into the hands of the law. I don't worry about racism. For me, I worry a whole lot about it for others.
Oh, I totally understand that. Yeah, absolutely. I do get that for sure.
Elie Wiesel said, you must not tolerate the intolerable. And if it's intolerable for one black mother, it's intolerable for me, because that black mother is one of my relatives, because we all came from the same black females who evolved about 500,000 years ago.
You know, now I think you and I now are on the same page, Jane. I think we're on the same page. I think we had a different dialogue.
But yeah, that's what this is all about, though. Words have consequences. People have been killed by words on a daily basis in this country. Ever since we started this country, we have been killing people with words. We do it all the time. And yet, when I was a kid, we said, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It wasn't true then, and it isn't true now. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words cause we use words to do psychological genocide every day in this country. And when somebody says, and when a white person says, it doesn't affect me, oh my God, do you realize how lucky you are? And I don't think most of us do. I don't think most white folks understand how lucky they are. And it isn't because they have white privilege. It's because most white folks are ignorant about what causes skin color and what skin color means. And so they dislike people or distrust people and they blame it on the color of somebody else's skin. It isn't the color of skin that's the problem. It's the ignorance about skin color which is the problem.
Beautifully
and we
said.
do a bad job of educating.
Beautifully said. I totally agree. Jane, let me ask you this. I understand the power of words. I understand that people, out of ignorance, throw words around and it cuts like a razor on someone's colored or whatever non-colored skin. I totally get it. And sometimes by the way we act towards them is just pouring salt into the wound. But let me ask you this, and I'm truly asking you this because I want to know what you think about this. What about personal responsibility? And what I mean by that is, you know, I go out in public all the time. People call me words. I had an incident sometime in the recent past. Someone called me a big old fat name I'm not going to announce on the air. But I decided in that moment for me that I'm just going to step aside and metaphorically, energetically not let this bother me. And in so doing, I had so much peace because as soon as I would have sounded off back to this person, I would have been in the midst of a fight, and I don't mean necessarily a physical confrontation, but just in a bickering and ongoing debate task with someone else. But in my stepping aside, that person was left to be with themselves because I didn't engage or buy into the dynamic or the game of someone that called me that name. A lot of people of whatever shade of color of skin have raised themselves out of, quote, the hood. They've raised themselves out of the projects, the metaphorical projects that seems to invade everyone's consciousness in that way. So where does personal responsibility come in to say, you know what, I'm truly above this. This does not affect me because I am not what you think I am. You are what you think I am.
When that one person said something nasty to you, had you had that a lot of times in the last 6 months?
No, totally. I totally get your point. Absolutely. No, that
all right, then let's make the point. The point is that was one person attacking you with no support behind him or her. That little black child walking down the street every day knows that the whole society other than his own parents and brothers and sisters and the members of his color group, see him as less than human on a daily basis. And it isn't one person saying these things. It's the President of the United States saying these things. And the President was elected by the members of the Electoral College. So that kid knows that not only does that little boy in the next seat think less of him because of that little boy's ignorance about skin color, the whole society does. It elected a man who says ugly things about other color groups. So one-on-one for you is very different, as an adult, is very different than society on one 24/7 for a little black kid, or a little brown kid, a little Native American kid, or any of those people who came to this country from those shithouse countries, as our president described them. You see, it isn't just one person. Yeah, it isn't just one person. This kid hears this all day, every day. If he turns on the television, he's bound to see that he is less than. If he goes outside to play, if he doesn't stay in the right place, he's bound to be told by a whole lot of people that he's less than. The television tells him that he's less than.
Yes.
The church tells him it is less than, because last month, when we showed pictures of Jesus, he looked just like the little Pillsbury Doughboy. Now, Jesus didn't look like the little Pillsbury Doughboy. Jesus had feet of bronze and kinky woolly hair.
Right. Right.
So that little black kid is being blasted with this stuff all day, every day. You got it once, he gets it. He gets it from before he's born, because his mother doesn't get the same treatment in the delivery room that the white women do. And if you think I'm lying about that, then come with me to a midwives conference and hear the reason many of them became midwives. Because they wanted to see to it that women of color got treated as well in the delivery room as white women did. So you see, this starts with that kid before birth, and that there are places in this country where you still can't be buried in the local cemetery if you aren't the right color. So this isn't something that happens, once and I just said he's ignorant. No, that's everybody, including your teacher and your preacher and the person running the pharmacy and the person running the supermarket and the person in the gift shop and at the filling station. And the cops all say this, all give the same impression of how they feel about you. That's a whole lot different from one-on-one for an adult.
Thank you for the fresh perspective, because being me, I'm old enough, I have enough common sense, I've done enough spiritual work on myself to where I can't step aside and not let it affect me. And then you bring up this little boy who doesn't have those kinds of abilities. I totally get that. And then most people would say, well, it's the parent's responsibility to raise the child to be, you mean the same parent that was raised when they were a child, subjected to the same oppression? So I totally get that now.
See, there we go again. We're saying it's the parent who raised the child who's being abused, right?
No.
What about the parent who raised the child who's doing the abusing?
Let me clarify my statement. Most people would automatically go to, it's the parent's responsibility to raise the child to be solid and stable. And my next thought was, you mean the same parent that once, when they were a child, they had the same experience of being bullied. So how could they do so? Raise the child.
But they do it all the time. Black women and men do that all the time.
Sure they do.
Black women and men, particularly black women, raise children who are strong and stable and develop coping skills that you and I have never developed because we've never had to.
Sure.
But when you say the parents, it's the fault of the parents. It's the fault of the parents who raised the kid who is mistreating somebody because of the color of their skin. Those parents need to be. Those are the ones who are making the mistake. And those are the ones who solidly, to this day, believe that no black man had better look at my white daughter, and no black daughter should ever look at my white son.
Yes.
Those parents are the ones who need the counseling. Those are the parents who need to be re-educated, but they need to be reconditioned because they have been conditioned to believe in the myth of white superiority. They need the reconditioning, not the black kid on the street who's being abused by the kids whose parents haven't grown up.
For me, Jane, it's truly not a black, white, red, yellow, blue issue. It isn't.
That's because you're white. That's because you're white. If you're black, it has to be a black, red, white,
at
yellow
some point,
issue.
don't you think personal responsibility? I'm not saying that we didn't have white privilege and we had it easier. I'm not any way, shape, form of
No. Don't use
that.
white privilege with me because the person who did the white privilege, have you read Peggy McIntosh's list of white privileges?
I have not.
Now, before you quote white privilege again, before you even use that phrase again, read that list of white privileges. She had 25 white privileges. I have these privileges because of my race. I can stand up and give my opinion and not be ridiculed because of my race. I can get in a house. I can buy a house in the neighborhood I want to and not be refused that house because of my race. Now, she wrote that before anybody told her, Peggy, baby, there's only one race. If you can do those things because of your race, and we're all members of the same race, then we should all have those same freedoms. We should all have those same privileges. But we don't have those privileges because of the ignorance of white people who think that there's only one race. And the list of white privileges nails down, absolutely reinforces the idea of race. She will eventually restate every one of those white privileges, and she'll say, I can do these things because of the color of my skin. And once she puts the color of my skin there, it is going to be so ludicrous and so ridiculous and so ignorant that she will stop talking about white privilege. We have to start talking about white privilege because it isn't white privilege, it is privilege based on a faulty premise, which is that there is more than one race on the face of the earth, and there isn't. There are lots of different color groups, lots of different cultural groups, but there's only one race. Am I making this clear to you? Are you glad you called me?
Actually, I'm loving the fire between you and I. Most people I just love the passion that how you and I both speak. So, Jane, we're at the bottom of the hour. Everyone, this is Keith Anthony Blanchard, Center of Light Radio, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, every Monday night. I didn't announce at the beginning of the show, but very soon, either the beginning of February or March, we're going to add another hour to this broadcast, which I'm very, very excited about. Stick around for details on that. Today, my guest is Ms. Jane Elliott. You can find more about her at JaneElliott.com. Jane, is there anything else you'd like to say to listen audience so they can find out more about you and how to find your works and your books and all that cool stuff?
You don't have to find out more about me. What you have to find more out about is people who are other than of your color group. Let me ask you this. Who was our first black president?
I'm assuming it would point to Obama, unless there was someone who was interracial that had just lighter skin.
Abraham Lincoln was our first black president. He was part black. No, the point is that you said Obama first.
Well,
and he wasn't first.
Yeah, totally. But
Abraham Lincoln was the first black president. I did happen
to follow it up with the fact that someone could have been of a black race but just had lighter skin, and you brought up Abraham Lincoln. So please tell me more about that. I'm curious.
But he was never identified as black by the people who elected him, nor who followed him. And right now, and have for years, the Republican Party has been called the Party of Lincoln. How long do you think they'll continue to call the Republican Party the Party of Lincoln once they find out that he was a Melungeon, part black, part white, and part Cherokee Indian? Is that going to be difficult for those folks?
You know, Jane, I recently found out, say a couple of months back, that they were supposedly, I may have the number wrong, but it'll make the point, 5 presidents before the white ones that we know that were of the black persuasion. Is that true? Would you know about that history?
Well, I know that there were at least 4. I don't know all 5, right. But I know 4. And wait a minute. Every president, every man who has ever been president of the United States had the same great-great-great-great-grandmother back there 500,000 years ago, and she was black. So, in fact, every president has been black. But we have called them all white because we absolutely refuse to think about what would happen if we get our DNA done. My ex-daughter-in-law got her DNA done, and she was absolutely positive that she was either Norwegian or Swedish. So the results came back, and she is Irish and English, and part of her DNA came from Nigeria. Now think about that. This blonde, blue-eyed, lovely woman has been convinced all her life that she's pure white, and there's no such person as pure white. We are all descendants from those first black females that evolved 500,000 years ago. I think it's time to start teaching that in the school. Have you read the book The Myth of Race by Robert Wald Sussman?
I have not. You can bet I'm going to listen back to this broadcast and
You
write
can
down
bet
that
it. You
information
bet it,
so I can
'cause
check it out.
if you ever call me again, I will ask you what it said on page 325.
I dig it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. Thank you for the check.
If everybody would read that, and if everybody would read They Came Before Columbus, and if everybody would read Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, we could turn this thing around because we would be educating people instead of indoctrinating them. If kids could go to school during National Brotherhood Week and see that we really are not all brothers but all cousins, if they had teachers who would really say, now look, here's the way it is, here's where your family came from, and they would all end up realizing that we all came from black people in sub-Saharan Africa. And there were black people who were curious and adventurous and brilliant, and they peopled every piece of land large enough to land on all over the world. And as they went north, farther and farther from the equator, their bodies produced less and less melanin, so their skin got lighter, and their hair got lighter, and their eyes got lighter. And that's what skin color is all about. And I think it's if we could just convince white people of this, we would have freedom at last in this country. But as long as we believe in the myth of race, we will never be free. We will always be, our lives will be dictated by the lie of race.
Jane, sometime in the recent past, I watched this TV show where lots of people of different colors were doing this DNA testing, right? And so everybody went into it with the idea, with, let's say, John or whoever, went in with the hopes they had so much a Native American in them. And this white man or this white girl went into it hoping they wanted to tell you what they assumed their ancestry or their history was in their lineage. And boy, you should have seen the look on some of these people's faces when they found that they were not Indian. They had a lot of black in them, or they were not this, and they had a lot of this in them. They have these pre notions that they're going to be this thing, and when they find out it's none of the race that they hoped it to be, their whole world comes crashing down, and you can see it all over their face.
And that is so unnecessary. If we would teach the truth from the beginning, because Native Americans are also in their DNA as black. Black people came to this continent, and over the years, because they were exposed to less sunlight, their bodies changed color. It has nothing to do with they did not pop up out of the ground. They came to this country from sub-Saharan Africa. Took a long time, but when you read Van Sertima's They Came Before Columbus, all of a sudden it's going to be like, why didn't somebody tell us this? Why didn't we know this? Because we don't tell things that make us white folks look less than. We have to. Are you aware that in Africa they were doing cataract surgery with metal instruments before there were hospitals in Europe?
Did not know that.
No, of course you didn't know that, because it's when you stop at a stop sign, that red light, you're looking at that red light and you're thinking, damn, I got to get out of here, I got to get out of here. And when I'm sitting at the stoplight and there's a big truck beside me and the big burly guy in the truck, he's on schedule and he's got to go, and I look up and I grin at him, and I know he's thinking, that I think he's such a lovely thing. And what I'm really thinking is, your life right now is being dictated by the invention of a black man. And when I put my shoes on in the morning, I know that it took a black man to invent the last so that I could have a left shoe and a right shoe and have cheap shoes, because this guy made a last so that you could sew shoes together mechanically instead of by hand. If kids knew that kind of thing as they walk down the hall and look at shoes and say to themselves, yeah, you got those shoes because a black man invented the last. But we do not give black students, we do not give black people something to be proud of. And they were here long before we got here, and they'll be here long after we're gone, because their bodies will not be destroyed by exposure to the sunlight that we're going to get more and more of now, because Mr. Fool in the White House has now taken off the limits on how much pollution you can put in the air. And so we're going to be exposed to a worse and worse situation as we destroy more and more of the ozone layer. But folks are in trouble, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah, it seems that this place that we're in now, this time period, there's just lots going on everywhere about everything. And that sort of parallels with what I mentioned to you a little earlier, Jane, at least for me in my life, at least in my system and how I process information and energy and exist in this world as a peaceful human being. I totally believe with my entire being that as I am peaceful, I am more powerful, more prepared, more clear to help as an active participant in my contribution to the world when I become clear. I don't buy into politics. I understand it exists. I understand it affects a lot of people. I don't buy into terrorism. I understand it exists and it does affect a lot of people. But my job, my gig is to become as clear and as solid as a rock as possible so that I can educate others through this illusion that seems to be drowning the world in strife and misery.
Well, the illusion that has been drowning the world in strife and misery has also been reinforced by the way we picture the one we all want everybody to worship.
I understand. And so my gig is to raise people beyond that, raise them above that with information like you are doing. You are just supplying this radio audience with lots of information that never come across our path. And to you, because of the work that you have done and all the knowledge that you have gleaned, and you're bringing this forth, I totally agree that people needs to hear more of what it is you're sharing so they can begin to...
No, they don't. They need to go out and go to somebody who knows these things and say, what book should I read this week? They need to turn off their television. They need to put down their handheld games. They need to say to their children, you will read. You will spend half an hour in sustained silent reading every day from now on as long as you live under my roof. And I will give you the books that you're going to read. And you will turn off that television after school. You will not watch more than an hour of television any night, except maybe Friday and Saturday nights. The rest of the nights, you will not watch more than an hour of television. They need to recondition their children to the idea that there is more to learn out there than they're learning in school, and they need to be prepared, and their parents need to be prepared to confront the racism that is in the textbooks and is in the standardized testing and is in the situation where children of a certain color and a certain size and a certain age are guaranteed perfection. And children of another color or another size, one of the worst things you can be in this country is overweight, particularly as a female. You know that as well as I do. We destroy young girls every day because we dislike the way they look. We destroy little children of color every day. We make them think less of themselves. If you haven't read Nathan Rutstein's book, the conditioning of the racial conditioning of our children, you better get it and read it, because the subtitle is Ending Psychological Genocide in Our Schools. If you haven't read that book, you need to read that so that when you come and you ask somebody like me to come and talk to you, you won't make the mistake of saying it doesn't affect you, because let me tell you that racism affects you every day of your life, even though you don't buy into it. It affects you in the way that here are the things that you're going to buy to wear, and they will be produced in another country because the people who would work producing them in this country would be people of color, and we don't want to spend that much money paying people of color for doing those jobs. So we send them overseas, and people of color produce all these lovely things and work for something like maybe 25, 35, 40 cents an hour. That's racism.
Yeah,
every one of us is affected. Yeah, every one of us is affected by racism every day. But if we're white, we can say, I don't see it. The last time anybody said to me, I don't see color, will be the last time they'll say it to anybody else. Because when some woman, that's usually a white woman who says to me, I don't see color, I say, well, if you saw color, you wouldn't wear that dress, that blouse with those pants. It's obvious you don't see color. And then they say, you know what I mean. I say, I know exactly what you mean. What you mean is you don't want to see somebody's color because you are uncomfortable with skin color. So you're going to pretend you don't see it. You're going to say you're colorblind. I couldn't tell you the names of all the people that have told me they were colorblind. And I say to them, let's go down, as Linda Guillory did. Black Linda Guillory said in a workshop I was doing, let's go. Somebody bounced up to her and said that. And I was standing there, and I thought, oh, Lord, I've got to back up. There's going to be bloodshed here. I don't want to get blood on this suit. And I backed up, and Linda Guillory very kindly said, I think you have an eye problem. Let's make an appointment with this optometrist so that we can take care of your eye problem. I'll bet that woman never said, I'm colorblind again.
Jane, you had mentioned Europe a little bit ago. Let me ask you: do you think that the level of racism is that which it is in America, in Europe?
The letters that I get from overseas would tend to indicate that it is exactly the same. And I've been to several countries overseas, and the same thing is happening there as is happening here. And one of the reasons it's happening is because we send people to fight in wars in Europe and spread that vicious, disgusting racism everywhere we go. And now we have people all over the world have access to television. And if you have access to United States television, you have access to how to be a racist. Want to talk about responsibility?
Sure. I love responsibility.
Yeah, well,
I believe personal responsibility. Of course, having what it takes to be responsible, the information and the knowledge and the understanding and the teachings that it takes. But personal responsibility for me, if everyone on the planet took personal responsibility, we could snap out of it.
Well, I will not soon forget the man who works for a major newscaster in my living room, was there to interview me because of what I do. And then we went outside to do exterior shots, and he said, Jane, I did a terrible thing to my child. He's a tall, black, attractive man. I said, what did you do? He said, we were living in Japan, and we had no problem. And we came home, and we were watching I was watching television the night the man was doing the business on the bell curve. Remember that bell curve? And he said, my son, who was 5 years old at the time, turned around and said, Dad, why are they saying those awful things about us? So he changed the channel, and it was a different, very erudite white newscaster saying the same kinds of things. And the kid, he said, he got up in my lap, and he said, Daddy, let's go back to Japan. I don't want to live here anymore. By that time, that tall black man, there were tears running down his cheek, and he said, I shouldn't be crying about this. I said, why shouldn't you be crying about this? Your child got a rude awakening to what life is like in the United States. He hadn't had that experience in Japan, but he will have it here. And you don't have to apologize for saying to his son, he's wrong, he's a fool and a liar, don't believe what he's saying. But the man got paid immense amounts of money for dealing with the bell curve and showing that those people of color are at this end of the left side of this curve, and as you go up, they get less and less people. There are less and less people of color. And at the very top, there aren't as many, but as you get down to the other side, they're all white, and those are where the brilliant ones are. That's what the kid was learning as he sat there the first night he was back in this country watching television. Now, the man who wrote the book, The Bell Curve, should be, well, there are several things that ought to happen to him. But nobody should buy into that nonsense. He's a man with a lot of education. He knows what he's talking about. He does not.
Jane, could you give us, those who are not familiar with all of your work, can you tell me a little bit about your Brown Eyed, Blue Eyes program or the exercise?
I'm glad you said exercise because you had in your mind to say experiment, didn't you? I'm glad
I
you
did.
I know you did.
But was it? Let me ask you,
congratulations, congratulations, white boy. I'm really glad you said that. Right.
It wasn't an experiment initially. That's an honest question. It wasn't an experiment.
No, it wasn't. It was never an experiment. And let me tell you, what I do is create a microcosm of society in a third-grade classroom or a boardroom or a learning center, and I put people through an exercise in discrimination based on the color of their eyes. And I put brown-eyed people on the top every time because most people of other color groups have brown eyes, and they've had all the abuse they need to take in this country. The first time I did that was the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. And I can't talk about that. Saying those words causes me pain because Martin Luther King Jr. had been one of our heroes of the month in February, along with George Washington, who owned slaves, Abraham Lincoln, who refused to free the slaves until he absolutely had to, Daniel Boone, who took over Native Americans' land without paying them anything, and Davy Crockett, who was killed as he tried to kill Mexicans as we tried to take over their land. Those were our heroes of the month. Did you try to check? I was going to have to go into my classroom the morning after that happened and explain to my students why Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And I couldn't think of a way to explain that horror and that ignorance to 9-year-olds in all-white, all-Christian Riceville, Iowa. So I decided, as I was ironing the teepee that my previous year's third graders had made, and I was going to put up in the classroom the next day, that not only was I going to teach them the Sioux Indian prayer, which says, "O Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins," I decided that I would arrange to have that prayer answered for them. I decided that I would give them the opportunity to find out how it feels to be something other than white in the United States of America. So the next morning I went in, separated my students according to the color of their eyes, and treated the people who had blue eyes the way we constantly and consistently treat people of skin other than white in this country. The first thing I learned was how I looked to black people and to brown people and to all those who are other than white. It just terrified me. My little brown-eyed third graders turned into what I had taught them to be, and what their parents had taught them to be, and what the preacher had taught them to be, and what all the other teachers had taught them to be. And I recognized it immediately, and I thought, how will we ever get forgiven for this? I was just sick. And when I went to the teacher's lounge at noon, because it was just so horrendous what my kids had turned into, that I needed some support, and I was sure that my educated friends in the teacher's lounge would understand what I was talking about, and they could help me. So in the teacher's lounge, the other two third-grade teachers were there. One was probably 56 at the time, and the other was over 60, or probably 62, and she had been molding young minds for over 30 years. I told them what was happening in my classroom the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. And the younger of those two third-grade teachers said, "I don't know how you have time for all that extra stuff. It's all I can do to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic." Well, she hadn't taught reading, writing, and arithmetic yet. She may as well have done the extra stuff. The other one said, and I'll never forget it as long as I live, she looked up, and this is a woman who goes to church religiously, and said, 62 years old, "I don't know why you're doing that. I thought it was about time somebody shot that son of a bitch." Now, nobody wants to hear that language over the radio. Nobody wants to hear it in a teacher's lounge, in a public school building where there are no people of color. You have no excuse for that hatred. You have nothing to base that ignorance on except the fact that you have finished college and you have been reinforced in knowing who is right and who is wrong. I was absolutely furious. I expected some teacher to say, "Well, and God is love." Or maybe, "Insomuch as ye have done it unto one of these, my brethren, so have ye done it unto me." Or any of those other wonderful phrases, those wonderful lines that we repeat. Nobody said anything. Every one of those teachers either smiled or laughed and nodded, because she had expressed their feelings perfectly, and as the most senior member of the group, she had the most right to do so. I went back to my classroom determined that no person of any age will ever leave my presence with those other attitudes unchallenged. I may not be able to change your attitude, but I can challenge your attitude, and you have to prove to me that white people are superior. You can't do it because it isn't true. And if you think it is, oh, well, I could go into a real long spiel about that. You don't have time for that. I learned more that day than I wanted to know about racism. I watched little boys, dyslexic boys, who couldn't read the day before they got magic eyes, read words I knew they couldn't read and spell words I knew they couldn't spell. And I watched a little blue-eyed girl who came into my room reading at the 6th grade level and whom I taught to multiply in about the first 15 minutes of math class. She never made a mistake in multiplication again until she had the wrong color eyes. And I watched that girl disintegrate in front of my very eyes. She made mistakes in reading, she made mistakes in spelling, and she forgot how to multiply, because I told her that she had the wrong color eyes. If you can do that with third graders, 9-year-old white children, in one day, think of how you can change the brains of children of color if you do it to them for a lifetime. And think how you can change the brains of white people with that lie. And it is a lie. That's what I've learned, and that's what I wish people would remember, that if we treated white people every day the way we treat people of color, they would act exactly the way other color groups are acting. There is no defense at the age of 9 against the kind of things that a racist teacher says, or when you're in high school and a racist coach is saying them, or when you have a psychology class in which you are told that, well, after all, according to the bell curve, and they believe that nonsense, and in order to pass the course, you have to regurgitate that nonsense on a test.
Yes, yes. Jane, we are slowly but surely coming to the top of the hour. I want to first say how much I only know one person who has the same kind of passion I do, and that is you. I love your fire about what you are doing to make an amazing difference in this world. I really mean that. I do. I did tell a friend of mine, Dan Hoquist, I put this question to you, and the question is, would you please ask Jane, what is the difference between racism and prejudice?
All kinds of different. Racism, prejudice is prejudging people, period. On any basis. Racism is having the power to prejudge people on the basis of the color of their skin and having the power to institutionalize your prejudice. Racism is a powerful force. Prejudice is something that everybody has. I have a prejudice where snakes are concerned. I'm scared to death of them. I have a prejudice, well, I'm not scared to death, but doesn't bother me to kill them. I have a prejudice where mosquitoes are concerned. I have a prejudice where the flu virus is concerned. I automatically judge it's not something I want. I'm not prejudiced toward people of different skin color, or even toward those whose skin is colorless. I don't prejudge people on the basis of the color of their skin. That's racism.
Jane, we got 2 minutes. Would you please give us a final thought to take us out of the show, please?
There's only one race on the face of the earth. You all have the same ancestor. You better start treating people like cousins that you like, or at least that you will protect from harm, because within 30 years, white people will have become a numerical minority in the United States of America. And somebody always says to me, well, if they get power, aren't they going to want to treat us the way we've treated them? If that is your fear, then what you need to do to fix that is treat people the way they want to be treated, not the way you want to be treated, but the way they want to be treated. And see, I don't believe in the golden rule. I believe in the platinum rule, which says do unto others as others would have you do unto them, which means you have to have conversations with them. You have to talk about what they want instead of just assuming that they want the same things that you and I do. They don't. And if they do, they'll tell me so. If they don't, they'll tell me so. That means we have to communicate with one another. Start communicating with those who are different from yourself. You'll learn an immense amount.
Wow. Jane, thank you for being a powerful, informative guest on Center of Light Radio. I absolutely appreciate you coming here and sharing with us your fire. Seriously, dear.
Well, thank you for listening, and you may lose a whole lot of listeners because of this, but if you're a white man with a little bit of courage, don't let the turkeys get you down. Don't let the turkeys get you down. You're going to take a lot of abuse over this. You are not responsible for anything that I said. I am responsible for what I say, and anyone who wants to disagree with it, you have my permission.
Like I said earlier, Jane, I'll just metaphorically, something comes my way, as I said before, I'll just metaphorically, energetically step aside and let it fly right past me.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Stop it. And hand it back to the person who threw it to you.
Oh, sure. And I love the idea that when the person spit on Martin Luther King, he took out his handkerchief and wiped it and brought it back to the person and said, I think this belongs to you.
Yeah. Oh, what a good idea. What a good idea. So when somebody says something ugly to you, you need to say, oh, well, that's reflected in my face, and now you got it back because it's reflected on you. How do you like it now?
Jane, thank you very much. I'll look forward to having you again in the future. Keep us posted on what you're doing, new books you got coming.
Okay.
Don't you have a new book out right now, dear?
Well, yeah, I wrote a book called A Collar in My Pocket, but it isn't a book as much as it is a memory of the things that have happened to me, and I advise people to read it because if they do, they'll find out how white people respond to being treated for a few hours the way black people are treated for a lifetime.
Sounds like a wonderful
And they'll
part to
appreciate it.
everyone. Ms. Jane Elliott, you can find more about this powerful guest at www.jane, J-A-N-E, Elliott, ELLIOTT.com, JaneElliott.com. Next week on Center of Light Radio, my guest is going to be Charis Molina. Powerful spiritual lady. Wow, I'm looking forward to having her. Also, remember, people, when you lay down at night, you have nothing to do. Nothing to do except go to sleep. Breathe, 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 breathe. Breathe with the intentions that you want something beyond you've always known.